Okay, hello everyone. This video is for February 8th and 9th, the Monday and Tuesday of this week. So today I have an announcement and we're going to do our Black Scientist of the Day, and then we're going to start talking about pedigrees. So I have a little bit about what pedigrees are, and then we're going to jump right in to figuring out how to read pedigrees. After we figure out how to read them, you're going to create your own. You're going to get some practice putting them together. You're going to just use your own family or a fictional family, depending on what you like. And then we're going to end with a pedigrees exit ticket just to make sure that you are getting what we're talking about. My only announcement for today is the same as last week, which is that iStep is Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. So if you are my red day watching this, you are asynchronous on the Tuesday, and this is what you'll be doing. And on Wednesday, so my green days, you will have another video coming up for Wednesday's class about what you are expected to do. Just like last week, I will send out a Canvas message and I'll put this on announcements, so it's very obvious where to find this information. So just like last week, you do not have to come to school those days. We actually ask you not to. And the work will be asynchronous, meaning that we will not meet on Zoom, but you are expected to do this assignment and be ready for the next day of class. If you have any questions while you're doing these assignments, you can always email me. I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can, but I am proctoring the iStep. I should be available after noon though, so if you want to meet one-on-one in a Zoom call, we can schedule one for sometime in the afternoon. Just let me know if you need that. So that is my announcement. For my Black Scientist of the Day, I have George Washington Carver, born in 1864 to 1943. So I really wanted to include this one because many of us know him as the guy who invented peanut butter, but that is not true. He did not invent peanut butter. The Incans did it 2,000 years before he was even alive. But what he did do is invent more than 100 recipes and 300 products that are derived from peanuts, products like dyes, plastics, and gasoline. These are big deals. That's a lot. That's a lot more important than just inventing peanut butter. So a little background on Mr. Carver here. He was born enslaved, so slavery was not abolished until 1865, so he was born enslaved. He was kidnapped at a really, really young age during the Civil War, but eventually returned to the owners. So even after slavery was abolished, he didn't have a family. His mom had died. So Moses Carver and his wife, Susan, raised him as their own. So they taught him how to read, how to write, cook, clean, embroider, garden, and even concoct simple medicines. And it's here where he really began getting a passion for sciences. So he left the farm at age 11 to pursue education. In 1894, he became the first African American to earn a bachelor's in science degree, which was a huge deal, big stepping stone. A lot of education was mainly for white people, so this was a big deal. And in 1896, he earned a master's of agriculture. So very into learning more about the world. So he's also credited for developing crop rotation methods, which are still used today. And essentially what happens there is certain crops like corn or cotton take certain nutrients from the soil. And if you plant the same one that takes the same nutrients, eventually the soil is not going to have any nutrients. We just take it all, and then we can't plant anything. So crop rotation methods include switching out the crops. So maybe you plant peanuts one season and then cotton the next, because they will take different nutrients out of the soil and put different nutrients back into the soil. So we can continuously use that area of land without worrying about us stripping those nutrients from the land. So very important things to make sure that we can continue growing food for our growing population. So super important accomplishment here. And lastly, he worked at Tuskegee Institute in an all-Black faculty for the rest of his life, which ended up being 40 plus years. It was very difficult to take his entire story and just kind of smush it down onto a slide. There's a lot of ups and downs as one has in their life, but George Washington Carver, so much more than just the inventor of peanut butter. So that's our Black scientist of the day. Next is talking about pedigrees. So I have a very short slide to just introduce what pedigrees are before we get into what they look like. So pedigree charts, the family tree of genetics. So we are going to talk about what a pedigree is and what do we use it for. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the symbols, so what it looks like. And then we're going to do a little worksheet on how to read a pedigree. So pedigree is a chart of the genetic history of family over several generations. So usually, just like Punnett squares, we'll look at a specific trait like dimples, or whether you can roll your tongue, or widow's peak, something like that. And we see who has that trait within our family tree. So is this something that we see in every generation? Is it something we see very sporadically? Do a lot of them have it? Just is a nice pictorial representation of that genetic history. So how we use this chart is scientists and genetic counselors will find out about your family history, especially when it comes to certain disorders, things like Huntington's disease, hemophilia, color blindness, and make this chart to analyze. So kind of like the Punnett square, what's the probability of us passing it on? Is it a dominant trait? Is it a recessive trait? A lot of information can be gotten from this pedigree. Before we can even start analyzing, we have to know what they look like and what kinds of things do we see. So this is kind of what a pedigree chart looks like. Right now, it looks like a lot of shapes and things that might not make sense, but hopefully soon they will. So the first thing about pedigrees is the shapes. So you might notice that there's a lot of circles and squares. That's because all the circles are female and all the squares are male. So if we look back on this pedigree, we can say that this is a male and this is a female. And then this is a male. This is a female. This is a female, and so on and so forth. So this one's a male, this one's a male, this one's a female, female, male, male, female, male. Okay, we're going to get lots of practice with this, but squares are male and circles are female. Remember that. So we also see a lot of connected symbols. So the first one we see a lot of is the horizontal line from circle to square. And this just means that it's a married couple. Now, married couples tend to have children sometimes. So whenever you see this down line and all of these are their children and therefore are related siblings. So if it's right next to each other, they're married. If they're connected by the top, that means that they are siblings. Okay, so here we can kind of see that these two are married, and then they had these three children. These two were married and then had these three children. These two were married and had these three children. So that's kind of how we're reading that. And then some additional examples. If we have fraternal or identical twins, we would show them like this. So instead of the vertical line, like this, we show them as those slanted lines. And if they're identical, there'll be that additional line there too. Other symbols that we see, so we see these circles and squares being completely filled in, kind of like a standardized test where you bubble in an answer, and those are affected. So if we're talking about a specific trait like hemophilia, if these circles or squares are filled in, that means that they're affected. That means they have that trait. You might also see some circles and squares half filled in, and those are carriers. And we can also look at carriers as those that are heterozygous, okay, which we'll talk more about how they relate to genotypes later this week. And then if those circles and squares have a line right through them, that means that those individuals are deceased. So next is an assignment about interpreting human pedigree. So it's going to be very simple. It's going to tell you a bit about how to read these pedigrees, and there's some really easy questions to answer. So right now we're going to go ahead and head over to Canvas. And modules like usual. Scroll all the way down, and we're here at Reading Pedigrees Practice. So you'll click here to make a copy. And this is what will pop up. So you are working with this pedigree, and this assignment, how it helps is each question, each number, so number 1, it'll tell you a little bit about how to read the pedigree. So for number 1, it says, in a pedigree, a square represents a male. If it's darkened, he has hemophilia. So we're talking about this specific pedigree. And if it's clear, he has normal blood clotting. So in knowing that bit of information, count how many males are there in total and how many of those males have hemophilia. And the same as for those other questions, it will literally tell you about how to read these pedigrees. And then I'll ask you some questions just to make sure that you are understanding what they tell you about how to read them. Okay, this one should not take you very long. Try to do it on your own, and then if you continue watching this video, we will go over it together. All right, so now we're going to go over this reading a pedigree assignment together, just to make sure that we are all there. So number 1 says, in a pedigree, a square represents a male. If it's darkened, he has hemophilia. If it's clear, he has normal blood clotting. So number 1 asks, how many males are there? So remember, males are squares. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So we have 8 total males here. So we can put 8 here. And the second question asks us how many of those males have hemophilia. And again, if you get from this reading, it says if it's darkened, he has hemophilia. So which of these squares are darkened? We have this one, and this one. So therefore, there are 3 males that have hemophilia. Number 2 says a circle represents a female. If it's darkened, she has hemophilia. If it's open, she is normal. So just like the last one, the first question asks us how many females are there? So again, females are circles. So here we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Also 8 females. And again, they ask us how many of them have hemophilia. So again, if it's darkened, they have hemophilia. So of these 8 females, how many have hemophilia? 1 here, 2 here. So only 2 of our females have hemophilia. Number 3 says a marriage is indicated by a horizontal line connecting a circle to a square. So then our question here is, how many marriages are there? So they're horizontal lines, right? Horizontal is these lines. So we have a horizontal line here between a male and a female, a horizontal line here from a male and a female, and a horizontal line here from a male and a female. Okay, see how they're right there connecting one another. So that is 3 marriages in total. Number 4 is kind of lengthy, but it talks about the siblings or the children. So it says a line that is perpendicular to a marriage line indicates the offspring. So perpendicular means like that. It kind of intersects at a 90-degree angle. If the line ends with either a circle or a square, the couple only had 1 child. However, if the line is connected to another horizontal line, then several children were produced, each indicated by a short vertical line connected to the horizontal line. The first child born appears to the left, and the last was born to the right. So question A here asks us, how many children did the first couple have? So the first couple is this one. Okay, so here's a couple. We have that marriage line. So from there, we have 1, 2 children. So here we have 2 children. B asks us a similar question, but about the third couple. So not this one or this one, but this one. All right, so they're a couple because they're joined by a horizontal line there. And then from there you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 children. And our last question says, level 1 represents the first generation. Level 2 represents the second generation. So it's talking about these Roman numerals here. 1, 2. Okay, they're referring to the generations. So A asks us, how many generations are there? So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4 generations in total. Okay, so that's kind of like if we're right here, or if I'm right here, these would be my parents, these would be my grandparents, and these would be my children. Okay, that's what we mean by generation. And then B asks us, how many members are in the 4th generation? So generation number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 7 members in the 4th generation. So hopefully that made a little bit more sense with how we read pedigrees. I gave you these answers, so please put them on your document and turn them in for real easy 5 participation points. And we'll move on. All right, the next thing is the create your own pedigree. So when we are on Canvas, we'll go to modules and we'll go all the way down, and it's going to be right underneath that practice. So creating your own pedigree. So you're going to make this chart, but with your own family. So you must include at least your grandparents, parents, and your generation. So your generation, your parents, and your grandparents. Include as much as you know. Make sure to label yourself. Label yourself, your grandparents, your cousins, your brother, your sister. Label those things and label the generations. I'm going to include an example of mine. I'll put it on here. I haven't scanned it yet, but I will. You can create your own family, or if you are wanting to do a fictional family, you can do that as well. So if you are reading a book and that's all that comes to mind, I guess, you can choose a family from that book or movies. So like if you are into the Twilight series or Harry Potter, you can create a pedigree chart for them. Now, I will say that depending on your level of knowledge of these books and movies, it might just be easier to do your own family. But if you want to go a little wild, you can definitely do a fictional family. Now, I suggest creating this pedigree on a separate sheet of paper. That just might make it a little easier, especially if you make mistakes. And if you do it that way, you could just take a picture and turn it in. Make sure it's very clear that I can see those generations, the labels, all that fun stuff. Or you can use Google Slides or some sort of online tool where you can create those squares, those circles, and the lines. Really, however you feel like it works best for you. Okay, shouldn't be too crazy difficult. Just I want you to get practice with using these symbols and the lines correctly. The last thing I want you to do is an exit ticket. And this is a quick 5-question exit ticket over very similar things that you did in the first assignment where it told you how to read the pedigree. So in this exit ticket, I have another pedigree. So this one is showing Huntington's disease, or the ones that are shaded have Huntington's disease. And it has 5 questions. How many generations are there? How many male and female children did the first couple have? Is the oldest a male or female? How many males have Huntington's and how many females have Huntington's? So it's just, can you tell me something about the pedigree and knowing the symbols that you just learned about? The last question is an extra credit one. It asks, since we see Huntington's disease in each generation, do you think it's a dominant or recessive trait? And this is just, can you guess? Can you make an educated guess from the information that you have? And if you get it wrong, there's no penalty. If you get it right, I'm going to give you an extra credit point. And then that's kind of going to kickstart what we talk about next class. So that's it for today. If you have any questions about any of this, please let me know. Otherwise, have a great rest of your day.